deal with that.
Facilitate that.
Just make a connection and that's it.
Yes, he's not on the so.
We're gonna wait for their fourth member needed to have a quorum. Brett Boyer is our fourth and he's coming by Zoom today, so. Wait a minute.
Extended hours.
I haven't flown for about a week, so
I haven't either. So I don't know.
Well, and we just said it was Paul Moses, right? And I'll play the rest of the time on the drop, but I do have to. Yeah. Nothing other here, I've heard.
So, somebody just check. Of
course.
I think they have to be present.
Leaving gaps. You know, like.
Oh, yeah.
There were no action items.
I guess you could have, you know, you can still have the meeting actually, but you just can't. You find it out on the discussion.
Is that where I want to go and call a meeting?
Oh.
Ask,
Yeah, but I was just following your cue, saying like, don't hold meetings to order, so it's like, okay.
Well, I don't know.
I'm not with that thought, man.
Frank knows better than the call.
Can you call a meeting to order without a quorum?
Yeah. You just can't. So I'm gonna. Call the meeting.
Meetings with less than simple majority may be conducted, however, no official action.
Thanks, sir. Call the meeting to order, do roll call of folks that are here. I see Mr. Henkowski, you're here.
Present.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson, you're here. Here. Brian Cleary, I'm here. I won't call you Chris or Mike, I'll call you Frank O'Connor. He's here.
Chris, I'll throw Ray and Doug in there, that was pretty much completed.
So we have 3 voting members and we're missing one, Brett Boyer, understandably attending, he's coming by online. So what I would suggest that I propose is that we kind of start wading through some of the things that don't require action. To the degree we can, and just to move things along. So why don't we stand and
Samantha, well, he's here. Excellent. In person.
not Zoom it in. Excellent. Even Zoom is making Zoom employees come back to work.
Yeah, I tried to get on, and then I thought I'm just gonna head over there.
All right.
I was
Well, I
out a
will
couple of
note for the record that Mr. Boyer has appeared, and I would say let's have a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I was going to introduce visitors earlier. I did not catch your name, but you were the Board of County Commissioners, and could you just introduce yourself and just mention your role? So I don't botch it.
Okay, Sarah Masters, I'm the executive assistant.
Okay, well, welcome, and let's see, we'll move to call for conflicts of interest. Is there anything on tonight's agenda that would persuade you that any of you individually have a conflict of interest that needs to be declared?
No.
I see nobody jumping up and saying they have one, so I would say we have no calls of interest, conflicts of interest exist, none. Changes to the agenda. Does anybody have a change to the agenda they would propose? Want to reshuffle anything? I see no call for changes to the agenda. I'm going to move to item 6 on the agenda. This is a consent item, should be noted as such. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. This would be the July 12th meeting minutes. Do I basically have any objections to the consent item on approval of those minutes. I see no objection to that, so those minutes are deemed approved. Moving to item 7 on the agenda, that's staff reports / updates. This is slated for discussion. We have it's listed as sub item B. There appears to be a missing A. The reports from airport director and Ardura. This is slated for discussion. So Director Patterson, do you have any updates to share with us?
We'll start with the project updates from Corey, and then I'll follow up after that.
Good evening, Cora.
Hi. Do I need to speak to this? Are you online? Okay. So, like I've been doing, I'm just gonna do the things that have changed since our last meeting. So the first thing is the Coeur d'Alene electrical improvement runway lighting project, and it's to do with the regulators and the generator. The contractor has started work on that project. They started on July 31st, and we're hoping they'll be done on August 22nd-ish. The only thing that is missing from actual completion is the generator, but they'll have the pad and everything. They'll deliver it to the site, and then they'll have to come back in for 1 day to plug it in and get it running and test it. And that's scheduled for mid-September, the generator. So that project should be wrapping up by the end of August. The snow removal equipment building, you guys can probably see it across the prairie. It's getting siding, windows, and I believe that the roofing will be started this week, I think. And with the snow removal equipment building, we've been working on putting a restroom in there. When we bid it out originally, there wasn't budget for a restroom, but the Idaho Transportation Department gave the county a grant, and so anyhow, we have the permit approval at the county for the restroom and the pricing for the restroom, so that will go in as a supplemental agreement over in the next commissioners meeting. So the next project that has a change is the runway 624 and taxiway B3 project. We plan to have a pre-construction meeting on the 15th of August, and then we're going to be issuing a notice to proceed on the 21st of August. And it'll involve at the beginning a lot of closures along taxiway in November. And then it's starting September 5th, then it starts with runway 624 closure for 18 days at that point. Let's see here, taxiway Charlie, it's the design. We've been working on getting scope of work approved through the FAA, and now we've been we submitted our fee to the airport. They had an independent fee reviewer that compared the fees, and the FAA has approved those. So I believe that contract will be on the agenda at the commissioner's office next week for a signature, and then we'll kick off the design and geotech and things like that for that project. And the last one is the environmental assessment. We've had some discussion on the environmental assessment today for air traffic control tower, land acquisition, and possibly commercial service. Nothing has been decided with the FAA. We had a meeting with them, and they are thinking that we could do a smaller environmental approach to the land acquisition portion of that project, and the other items, the air traffic control tower and commercial service, were tabled for now.
I have a question.
Yes.
So back to the generator, I'm just curious to know, what's the kilowatt rating with that and what type of fuel does it use?
It's gas, like natural gas, and so it'll be plumbed straight from the Vista into the generator. So, and I don't know the kilowatt rating right off the top of my head.
Not a problem.
It's supposed to, run the whole lighting system. So I can find that and get back to you.
No,
Okay.
don't worry.
So I have a question about the runway 624 closure date. Given the amount of fires that we've had this summer and the Forest Service activity out here, is there a contingency plan, or is it so hardwired because of the ability to get paving and that type of thing that we're locked into that date?
I would not say that you're locked into that date. We have been planning and moving towards that date. But if you push it back from the 5th of September, it probably will go to next spring. And then possibly increases in prices due to wages and things.
So have there been discussions with the Forest Service about that?
Yes, absolutely. So James is working on contingency plans, different aircraft he could bring in during that 18-day closure that could operate on 220. So we're looking, the BAUs, the C-130, those are pretty capable of working off of that ramp. So the MU-87 might leave for that 18-day period and then come back. So that's what we're looking at.
Anything else?
Was it a recent meeting with FAA, a conversation?
For the environmental assessment?
Yeah, for the EAM, sorry.
It was towards the end of July.
In the towering commercial service and they're on hold for.
Well, the tower is not completely on hold. The advice, so we were kind of jumping the gun on the tower for getting the EA. First, we have to do a benefit cost analysis to make sure that it's justified, and then also an application. So Gaston has a copy of the application.
We essentially have to be entered into the air traffic control system as seeing a need before they'll fund any sort of an EA or planning or studies.
How long is that potentially on hold? Do you have a guess?
They didn't give us any times as far as, once they receive our application, once we are in the system, essentially, we could be looking at that 18-month EA study.
And the commercial service, that's on hold for now as well. That's part of the EAM process.
Yeah, it also would be kind of more justified, I guess, in order to require the EA commercial service. So that's what we want to hear. And we're hoping to do a categorical exclusion for the land acquisition and to still move forward with that component, which is a smaller environmental review.
Thank you. Anything else under agenda item 7 in the form of reports from the board of directors?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things to update on at least going forward. The AWAS, we've actually made significant ground in getting augmented again, as a lot of you folks heard yesterday. The reason that the FAA is stating that it was ever taken away was because it's a federally owned and operated system. In order for it to be, the users operating the augmentation have to be certified weather observers. So when those individuals left, and Phil was actually one of them, he was the last one here. When he retired, they checked our status, not having anyone be that certified weather observer, they just removed the microphone until that person's replaced. It's as simple as sending a couple of our guys to get the certification. It's honestly just reading a METAR and taking a test and becoming a observer. And then they will come out and reinstall the microphone. There's no software that was ever removed from it. The AWAS is capable of doing it. So it's a pretty simple fix. So moving down the road to get that back. I would foresee, once we do have that capability back, sitting down with everyone and actually forming a policy on information that will be disseminated on the system. The FAA has gone a little more stringent, but as far as airport safety related items, runway safety, airspace related to the airport, it's wide open for us to use. So at least we have a clear path forward on getting that system working again.
Great news. So I have a question, so I've heard a reference to the aerodrome here at the airport, and then if you look on the map, you see the actual Class E outline. So what is the sphere of influence for the airport as far as the FAA is concerned with regard to updating that?
I don't know what the exact radius on the airport is. It has to do with the aerodrome's airspace, essentially. So the airport and aerodrome are considered two different things. When we look at closing 2 runways, say, when we do our projects here, the aerodrome itself is not closed. The helicopter traffic can still come in and out. The airport runway environment would be closed, so.
So is there a map of the aerodrome or is it some imaginary, non-dimensional?
I'm pretty sure it's a non-dimensional airspace. We are essentially, when they reinstall the microphone, we actually get a whole book on automating the AWAS that will say what we cannot do.
You don't get the book until you.
Until you're certified.
Okay.
So, at least moving forward with that, and it honestly, Mike Kincaid did a lot of work in that, meeting with Stanley with the FAA. He's our national representative for AWASs, and he kind of prodded our local office, and really digging into why. Because it didn't make any sense to the FAA that it was removed. He's like, you can't remove the software, like, is your microphone missing? So he's like, you're in our system, is augmented, so all good news. Gate keypad access, we have installed and have been testing over the last couple of weeks, one of the new keypads on the existing software on the Cessna gate. Everything has been working great, all the program key codes are working. We're now moving forward with getting all the other equipment in to install keypads on every hangar use gate. So if the gate accesses hangar users, it'll have a keypad, and the 2 ramps will have the new keypads. So I would say within about a month, you'll start to see them pop up on different gates, just kind of one at a time. They're going to get them knocked out as quick as they can. I would say in the next couple of weeks, we're going to ask users to come in and start filling out their forms to get their key code assigned to them.
Are those gonna be rolling, or once you get a key code, it's yours until something happens bad and then it gets?
Correct. Yeah, or you can tell me it's compromised or anything
Okay.
like that. We get you a new one. So that'll be usually like another set of keys.
And Cessna's the same way, will it be rolling or fixed?
It will be fixed for those tenants once we get it done.
And will the key codes be exclusive to particular gates then, or will they work around?
The
The
users, right?
user gates will work on all the user gates, so if you want to think of this on your report, the other side of your report, you'll be able to use your key code on it. On those gates, I should say. While we have users coming in and updating information while getting their key codes, there's kind of a new system that I've been looking into and want to get kind of out in the open with. Possibly starting a texting notification system for users. Right now, our only means of reaching out to everyone is either email or call them directly, paper letter. I thought it was kind of a needed thing to have a more instantaneous notification system for the airport. So there's a lot of systems where we can build a database of user phone numbers, and I can send out a simple text like 220 is closed, or this taxiway is closed, or the tower's in effect, here are the new frequencies, basically anything we want to disseminate instantly to the entire user with one text and a click button goes. So I want to use assigning the key codes as kind of the time to update contact information and get that out to the users.
So I have a question about that. So you mentioned that the PIN numbers would be a subset of the card. So you have to have a card in order to assign users with PIN numbers. And so the way you're talking about messaging there, I like for my family, I don't see any reason for them to be getting text on runway closures.
Sure.
They're-
And that's, yeah, I mean, that is, we can bend the form however we need to show
Okay.
that, these are the numbers you want to be contacted on. It might be a separate box, like for emergency contacts or airport notifications, please send it to this number. We start to build that database, and we'll build it off the hangar list as well. So just thought it'd be a needed way of communication where we can get, everyone has a phone in their pocket, an instantaneous notification from the office rather than relying on reading an email or seeing it on a sign on the gate or things like that. So
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah,
outside of that, just some simple stats. I talked to James over the Forest Service to just kind of get an update on how they're looking as far as fire season. They said they've flown 127 loads of retardant, out to Idaho, Washington, and Montana, totaling over 400,000 gallons of retardant delivered. So that's a pretty large number for this early in the season. Most everyone here has seen the large number of aircraft from the Super Scoops, 2 CH-47s, 3 to 4 seats on the west ramp. The Huey helicopters, our base aircraft here are the MD-7, MD-87, and the C-130. So those belong to the Fort Lake base through the contract fire season. During our project, they'll probably swap out the MD-87 for something lighter that could operate on the smaller runway during that time. But the last couple of weeks, there's been a little bit of concern with fuel availability in the whole region, Washington, Montana, and Idaho. I know I can attest to Joe Sandcraft team, they've done a great job of continuing to get fuel to the airport to service the fire aircraft. There are bases in Missoula, out of Bozeman, and most like that have actually run out of fuel at the airport. So for a short time, we did have some curtailment on fuel flow, but it didn't really affect our current operations. So I want to thank those guys absolutely for keeping that up and running during fire season.
So I noticed the big tanker out there for the CH-47. Did they bring in their own fuel?
They did, yes. Yep. And even those guys were kind of sweating a little bit. I guess it was a for planning a pipeline maintenance that feeds the refinery. They were doing maintenance that shut down the service to refineries, and refineries got behind, and this whole region was suffering fuel supply. So everyone was feeling the pain there for a little bit. Other than that, I know Kim has an update on our website. You guys were looking for some information on our website, and she has a little bit of an update for you.
Okay, any other questions for Justin?
Thank you.
Okay, so I did receive some training on the CBA airport website. And I found out that there is a lot more that can be edited and changed and updated than I had originally thought. There are a few things that we can't change at this point in time, so if you've been on our website, you know that there's a big picture kind of right under the start of it. We can change the picture. We can't change the size of the location at this time. Because I know when we wanted to put the tower information on the website, I wanted it to kind of show up right there in the middle where everybody could see it. But James in our IS department, IT department, put notice up in the banner, so it's still up there. It hopefully draws people's attention, and if you click on it, it does provide the frequencies and then a link to the NOTAM manager website for our official source of NOTAMs. Okay, and then there's also a grouping of tabs, if you will, across the top where we've got the documents and we've got development, things like that. Those also can't be changed at this time. But basically, everything else is changeable, which is pretty great. I have done a couple of things out there just playing around, and that's basically the way you have to just figure it out. You can't hurt anything, which is kind of nice because you're doing some live editing. So as far as putting waiting lists on the site, I did a little bit of research. I did not talk to our legal department, which is what I certainly would want to do. But I did find another site who actually will issue, let's say, Mike, you put in an application for a site to build a lease, then we would independently assign you a number. And then that list of numbers were on there. So you could go on the website and you would know where you sit, but you wouldn't automatically have access to everybody else's information, which, I mean, public information requests exist, but there's that extra step that you would have to take, or someone would have to take to get that information. So, you know, there is that, but, I don't know if you guys want to do anything else about that, but I'm slowly trying to make some changes and get it updated. Get some new links out there. You know, once we go live with some of these other things, we'll get announcements out there and forums out there as quickly as we can.
New fresh pictures.
Yeah.
So I think that's great news, Kim, and I think until we get some feedback from some of the stakeholders, there's probably people that would just as soon remain anonymous, but have access to their information to know how they follow down through. And if there was some way where if they wanted to do a freedom of information type request, they probably could do it without a good enough reason to do it, but it's a big step forward, I think, if you can just let people know that they're tracking down through the queue and what's happening.
And I have a comment on that too. So I agree with Steve on that, but I think the only thing that the users or potential leasees are looking for is where they are in the queue relative to others. Because I think the problem in the past has been they felt like they were getting pushed back or moved around. And so if you give a unique identification number to them, it's totally anonymous. I think that fixes all of the issues that were there.
Probably saves you getting a lot of phone calls too about where am I in the queue. So,
Well, also, I did notice, I went back on the website. Remember, I mentioned the last meeting that I was having a problem figuring out, like, my Vector Aviation LLC was on there on public information, but some of them were blocked and and you said they were working on that. Well, it apparently has all been updated so that when you go and you click on using the GIS website, the map website, you can actually see who the leasee is now. So you mentioned that was going to change, and it did.
Going in through the county websites.
Yeah, if you go to the map database, GIS, and then,
so any other items under staff reports from Kim? Any questions? Okay, I'm gonna move on to agenda item number 8, which is a update from the Coeur d'Alene Airport Association. But I have,
Since Harry's not here, and I know Jim's a board member and was at the meeting last night, maybe we could call on Jim Walsh to give a little bit of an update.
Sure.
I know you're not bashful, Jim.
As far as the association update, we had our big barbecue here a week ago. That was a total success. A lot of participants at fundraisers. As far as last night's meeting, went quite well. As far as updates, I think we were concerned about the cost of landing fees. That was discussed, and I think that was resolved. Also, there were some power discussions. I think that was about it. I can't contribute anything else. That's pretty basic.
I think Harry gave kind of the update that Gaston gave and talked about the gate codes and that.
Oh, yeah, we did discuss gate codes of that, but it's all as of right now. Kurt Lauer here is an overview of Coeur d'Alene Aviation Maintenance business.
Yeah.
It advised to, let me see how many AFPs on staff right now,
Yeah,
the 4.5 or 5.5, something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. I said with several AIs, so. And he said we got people that are qualified to work on everything from the little stuff to the big stuff, you know, listening into turbines and there was some mention, there's somebody somebody he had that does work on avionics. I didn't follow that.
oh, that was Barry over here at Advanced Avionics.
So Gaston, I was gonna ask you a question about Cessna access. So in the past, that gate's been open during quote business hours. Is there any plan to ever do that again?
We're moving towards some of this.
Okay, I suppose it has to do with the fencing. Okay.
Yep. We'll try and get it open this week.
Moving on to agenda item 9, which is business. Under that, we have sub item 9. Formatting this is interesting, but it starts with D. Formation of and nomination appointments to airport board study subcommittees is the slate for action. So under that category, we have, the first item is subcommittee to research and report to airport board on status and recommendations of airport complaints management system. So the item here is to identify or nominate individuals to a subcommittee. And I know Frank, this was something that you had raised in the past as an item of a subcommittee of some kind, whether it be one or more, I don't know. So I would kind of open up to perhaps I just start with moving to have nominations or
Well,
ask for nominations, I guess, unless you want to discuss it first.
Well, I think it was a good idea to get this laid out here, but since we're missing 3 members tonight. And, you know, I think we'd like to have their input too, as we move forward with subcommittees. That I think some of these subcommittee, I mean, I think we can have some discussion. Like. I hate to put this on Frank, but I know we've got some folks that are outside the board and outside the alternates that might also like to be on the subcommittees, and we might want to discuss that if that's appropriate to have those folks also be part of this. But as far as moving forward and setting up committees, I think that's premature.
So we would just, let's have discussion amongst ourselves tonight. We'll carry these items over for the next meeting for action, and we can have discussion at that next meeting too for the members who aren't here. So why don't we just open up?
Did I put words in your mouth, Frank? I hope I.
No, I agree with you. I think that's one of those things we want to have pretty much full confidence on the end to say, okay, he wants to do what. I know Joan wanted to be on the subcommittee for part 139 standards, but you know, we're missing enough members that I don't think it's appropriate at this point in time to form any kind of subcommittee.
Yeah, that's,
Well,
it's fine.
I have a question regarding that part 139 rules and standards. There are the rules and standards. But they're separate from part 139.
Sorry,
So should there have been a comment there?
yeah, I might have made a typo there. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the rules and standards are distinctly different.
Yeah.
State,
I think they made a typo.
Okay, that's fine.
I just wanted to clarify that. I've moved along. I noticed on the agenda, I send it to Jonathan and then he somehow gets got put and some of the words get flipped out. I don't know if there's like a.
Well, it's a nuance to somebody who isn't operating the navigator
Yeah,
that you combine those, so that.
I didn't intend.
And I think-
Not an issue.
I think some of the autocorrect stuff, like the AB, the sub deals, you might have had the right things in there and you go to hit send and
It wasn't intentional.
rolls it on through.
I'm sorry. But Mike, just to clarify you, for all of us, we're just gonna discuss it around tonight about this to the degree we want to, and then we'll table any action on that for the next meeting. Discussion wise, I was wondering, last meeting, you're kind of interested on the
Reviewing the rules and standards.
right, but
Yeah.
you were saying, you know, this should be. The people on this should be such and such, and it was like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I was just wondering, could you elaborate on that? You're saying like, it should be people that use the airport or something like that.
Well, okay, so that would help. Because there's a lot of knowledge that's required to evaluate the rules and standards based on usage of the airport here. And that somebody off the street wouldn't. They would know what's going on with that. So that was my only comment, is that, I mean, if you loaded up a subcommittee with people who are non-aviators, I mean, you're gonna get a completely different result, or potentially get a different result as far as their analysis of the rules and standards versus users of the airport.
Right, I just want to understand the comment, because we just kind of passed by it last
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so that I think that explains my.
Any other discussion on that item that anybody wants to share?
I've got a question, so on one, and maybe I heard this wrong, in the last meeting as well, I thought somebody said on a complaints management system. That they said they thought we were good.
That's what I thought.
Changed. So that there wasn't an issue with that.
Well, the comment I made was that I think the intention was to put something systematic in place that's exclusive of whomever managing the airport. At whatever point in time, it should be consistent. No matter what the administration is, so that if, for example. A stakeholder user has a situation where they go to airport management, they're unable to resolve a problem. Then they have a different avenue to go to get it out in the open and make sure that there's some resolution satisfactory for the parties. I would say it stands right now, I would have a problem coming to gas with any problem on my counter. And I have no doubt that we would resolve it, but you know, who's to say that somebody isn't going to run into a situation where gas is going to disagree with them? And at that point, we're going to need to have, say, somebody there to arbitrate it. And then help resolve it and document it so that Bruce in his position knows the problem to take care of.
And I add something, it really is about documenting. So that way you can go back in time and you can say, over the last 12 months, these are what the complaints have been, this is how it's been resolved. And then sometimes you start to see a pattern with them. And what that really means is it doesn't mean that someone isn't resolving it, it just means that maybe we need to address something and be proactive as opposed to reactive. And that's the whole point of it, is so it's just documented. I have all the confidence in the world that the management will take care of it and wouldn't need those things, but it is a good management tool to be able to look at stuff and kind of just see how things have been handled over the course of time. And the idea too is to just not have it. You know, so you're working down to the where you just hit the law of probability that you get one every once in a while, but you're gonna get that probably no matter what, just by the nature of the tenants or whoever else.
So also the people that come with the complaints, having a process that they can look at and say, this is the process. This is what we do. I think that's useful. Right?
Well, it'd be just another administrative function in your office.
Well, we have a lot of complaints. Yes, you're right. It's a burden, but the idea is to not have.
Or if you have a complaint that cannot be resolved. You know, to either party satisfaction in terms of way to deal with it. Not that I anticipate that at this point in the game, but I certainly visit situations in the past, and that's why I said get something that's outside of the people that are administrating.
Yeah, I'm okay with having like a standard process. I just remember that discussion from last time. Sure. So if we want to continue that discussion and have a standard process, that's.
Well, so does this complaint process encompass not only users of the airport and stakeholders, but I would assume it extends to the residents that are around the airport, because do you get many calls from folks complaining about low flying G5s and?
We did, especially now being fire season, we get quite a few.
Do they just want to know what's going on,
I
or?
would say 90% of them get resolved by just knowing that there's a fire nearby or that was a fire aircraft or, you know, those kind of complaints. We do see your normal complaints during heavy traffic times, but
So that's resolved during the phone call, probably.
yes, most of the time, yes.
So the complaints number somewhere on the website, I recall. And
Yeah, and our phone carrier has the complaints line.
right, okay, that's right, it's the generals,
Yep.
and then you call that and the complaints.
Who answers those? Okay.
And of course, most of the kind of complaints are really nuts. I mean, people are gonna be unhappy, you know.
Yeah.
Fire department putting food too over my house. You can explain the situation and that's much resolution you're gonna get.
And as a tool, I think we talked the other day about many of the new subdivisions, some of the older ones don't have it, but. They're required to sign an navigation easement that basically puts them on notice you live by an airport.
You know what happens to those, though? They use them after a couple of years and they forget they signed
The
them.
next 10.
It's just another tool that we need.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we were on agenda item 9 and the formation subcommittees. One was. You know, kind of to look into staff's recommendations on an airport complaint management system. And the other one was with regard to looking at the rules and standards, making recommendations. And so I just wanted to clarify that in the record. They're two different things. And what we've decided basically is by consent, it seemed like to table this We had a little discussion on it, but we're gonna table any action on it until the next meeting. Does anybody have objection to tabling it until the next meeting?
No.
No,
Hearing none, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead, with finish up. I want to jump back over to this complaints management system just for a quick comment.
Before I close it out.
Okay. So there must be some kind of a system in place countywide for complaints management within the organization, right? So, but.
There's
Three commissioners haven't been doing any research.
Oh, no.
The complaint is usually an email. And then, or it goes to, Jonathan, which goes to the commissioners.
Okay, but you're looking for something a little bit more refined than what currently happens.
Well, apparently we had problems before, right? And so, this was a result of that feedback from people like yourself. Right, and it's just basically saying if there is a formal complaint, not someone who's calling to gripe, and there's a difference between a gripe and a complaint. That, here's your complaint number, and it now is going into a process. Where, we'll try to resolve it, and I think, given the state of management now. That you want to resolve it before someone felt like they had to file a complaint, for example. And that's really the in essence what it is, but there were people who were not getting. They were not getting responses to things, and that would warrant, in my opinion, someone saying, I'm gonna file a complaint. In the past, and that would be feedback for management and the board.
Following up on your point, but I don't want to cut off your point. Did you have more?
No, before there was a two-step process. It was go to the airport director, and if you didn't get what you wanted out of him, you'd call the commissioners. And that was the process.
Yeah.
So that's gonna hopefully, well, maybe it'll get mitigated completely now.
Well, my phone forwards to Jonathan, so.
Okay,
So,
all right.
yeah.
So if somebody calls, just out of curiosity guessing, if somebody calls and not to vent necessarily, but to actually complain, I'm kind of distinguishing. Does that go into like a database here already, like it gets logged? And then my question goes on, which is, like, is that something like an FAA thing where it's like that log is something that. I don't know if it's a requirement, but I mean, it gets logged, and then when you go to do whatever you're gonna do. In terms of airport planning, that the FAA wants to see, like, what is your complaints log like, or is there anything like that?
I wouldn't say there's an official log or like an official complaint. Because most of them are resolved with the simple phone call or the initial contact, I would say. Outside of that, I mean, we could start to keep stats on something like that.
The reason I
That would
asked,
be-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. Most of them will come in the form of phone call. Obviously, emails are tracked. That is something we put back on. A lot of the inbounds into the complaint, like noise complaint line, I would say, a lot of that data is saved. So the actual voicemails themselves are saved and logged, so we can look back on those. But as far as an official log that is tracked, date, time, what it was, who it was, who called it, nothing like that. So that's definitely something we could.
So it's not like
That's pretty much what we're talking about.
it's not like a police blotter.
No,
The reason I asked it just as I was going through the master plan and also documents about master planning, right? Like, and in the context of this EA, I noticed FAA guidance documents speaking in terms of, looking at airport complaint logs for things like noise, right? And I just didn't, it just drew a question mark in my head, like, I wonder if this airport actually keeps a log like that then when you're doing an EA or something about, we're gonna, expand the airport or do something, and they need to look at noise, which is part of the analysis in the EA, whether they say, what's the log look like? I don't know if you have something like that,
so
but it's neat.
going forward, I agree, that's definitely data we should start to track, especially with the transitional time of the airport. Airport is at growing pain stage right now. Outside of that, I know one of the functions of an EA or a master plan, that's part of the public outreach. They're going to ask direct pointed questions like that, put it out to the public, like we want to receive the public's input on this topic, noise. As a airport library, then they're going to get bombarded with all this data, so that will also be a
another avenue of input.
At the action.
I think it's fair to say you've got two distinct categories, complaints, gripes. Who just calls them somebody unhappy the way airplanes are flying around their house, and then on the other hand, you get, say, for example, from stakeholders, which ever since I've been here, since 1989, people got complaints with their report. And I think that's the kind of animal we're looking to tackle here. Somebody's on the lease list, they feel like they got jumped, they didn't get treated fairly, they come to you, something like, well, you've been treated fairly, well, I don't think so, and that would be the kind of thing you would follow a complaint log and investigate a result one way or another. Basically a transparent record. The Bruce can come out and say, Frank called and said you go to a lease up here, but you gave it to Mike instead, well, Bruce, here's the information, the timeline, here's how we resolve it. Everything's out in the open, that kind of thing. But the people are gonna call and complain about noise, airplanes flying too low, and all kinds of things like that at any airport. And as you said, you capture those via telephone, that data is saved. I would presume that would be outside of such a system, what we're talking about.
More than likely.
Because then it would just, it'd be additional work to those out.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was about to close this out and without any objection, hearing an objection, I'm going to close out discussion on this. And without hearing an objection, we're going to table the action on these items regarding appointment of subcommittees until the next meeting. Going on to agenda item 9, business under sub E, schedule overview presentations and presenters on the airport master plan and other related planning documents. Last meeting, I kind of raised this up as be nice to have kind of an overview refresher of what is in the 2019 master plan. So that's common framework, because these things like the EA tier off at the projects that are now being scoped for an EA, tier off of that, right? And so it's good to kind of have a quick refresher on what's that plan. And then there's related documents like Brett, you brought up, hey, it might be a good idea to understand how Hayden's master plan, if you will, or comprehensive plan, it ties, dovetails, whatever with this. And I thought that was a worthwhile idea. So the point here is to, look at that as a reasonable time to schedule something like that, not like the, gee, I'm gonna bludgeon you over the head kind of presentation. It's the kind of light touch overview of the 2019 master plan, perhaps how the city of Hayden's planning document dovetails with that. And one thought I had about it is September is like right around the corner, so that might be too early. Maybe it's an October thing, so people can plan. The more time you have, the shorter the brief you write. So there's that, and then also who would prepare it, and that's one where I don't want to be out of line, but we do have a contractor, and we don't direct your contractor, we'll direct you, but it makes sense because they're like real familiar with that. So I'm just opening this up, kind of the nature of discussion. If we were going to schedule something, I would think it would be best to do it in the fall, like October-ish, if that's enough lead time. But also, I think you guys, this is just a proposed idea to get this on schedule. And then the other parts of it have to flow from it, like who puts the presentation together. And I'm having to work on it, that's fine, but
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. I mean, as far as airport staff, we can put together a nice overview. I think it's a good time to. It'll be post FAA visits to the airport. It's a good time to go through our schedule and kind of bring everyone up to speed with what does the plan look like and what our projects look like, there's some direction. It's like, this is a real basic overview.
so this is slated for action, but I'm in like fashion with the other items that we just kind of tabled. If there's no objection, I'd like to table that so the other members of the board can, weigh in, scheduling wise and any thoughts, but I'll go for discussion here, but I would like to just table any action on something.
Well, my concern is that we're treading close to directing staff to do something. And clearly Gaston and Kim and Gary are here, and they hear what we're considering. And if they voluntarily do that, I think that's great. But barring that, I think if we want to do that and it's not happening from them, then I think that's something that we need to talk about, making some assignments or whatever amongst ourselves is the way I would look at it. So from that, in that respect, I hear Gaston is being very cooperative and
Yeah.
we've already seen some major changes to the better. And I don't want you to feel pressured that this is something that we need right now this fall or whenever. And I don't want Bruce to think that we're directing the staff to do things. If we have requests, we ought to do something through Bruce probably, and Bruce can do what he wants to. But Frank looks like he's sitting on some.
Well, I've got two comments on this. Number one, as far as. Asking the airport staff to give us a broad overview, because it's a 260-page document. I sat down for about 90 minutes today and worked my way through it, got a pretty good general idea. I would invite anybody else on the advisory board if you want to get familiar with the plan. Just go right out there and read it for yourself. You need to have gas and do it for you. I think it's a little premature for us to jump into this. When you read the plan, you'll find it's a very well prepared, very professional document. They put a lot of time into it. They started in 2017, completed in September of 2019. And as I discussed with Gaston earlier, it seems to me what would happen is we would basically pick up from that document and do an update. There would be increments to it. There would be things deleted from it. But it's not going to be, I believe, a huge change, except as to how communities change and what we might desire we want to do with it. I just don't see it being a constructive use of the advisory board's time at this point to sit down and go through some kind of exhaustive analysis of this, unless, as I said, everybody wants to sit down and read through it. We have some kind of workshop or whatever, I don't know. Your city plan, how many times has that changed since 2019?
Once.
And it's probably changed again before this is done. So I mean, I guess my point is this whole thing is a moving target. So no matter what we do now, we're going to be going into it next year. And we're going to be covering a lot of the same ground again. So I would say that probably at this point, it would just be in everybody's best interest. If you haven't sat down and reviewed it, take some time to review it. It's very lengthy. It's like reading a small novel, but on the other hand, it's pretty straightforward. It tells you everything you need to know about the airport. You can begin to appreciate there might be some changes coming to it next year, but I just don't know that there's a lot that we can follow the ground with at this point in the game.
To your point, that's why I wrote it up as an overview and not a blow by blow. So I think that a very, and actually, as you mentioned, this thing that I'm posing on staff, I thought I had caveated it that way.
Well, I think you,
Yeah,
I think you did, but I'm saying that you're an attorney and you nuance things. I'm a blunt guy.
I thought I had bluntly said that, but anyhow, one of the things about it is the slide deck exists already.
Yeah,
And so you just reminded me of that as you were talking about that night, the slide deck from when they did the 2019 master plan and presented it to the public is still out there. And it's one of those things where it's a couple slides and you get an overview. And
Well, I think Mike, you reviewed it.
I have, and I agree. I was trying to figure out how to encapsulate my thoughts on this, and he hit on exactly. I completely agree with.
Want to know what's
Yeah.
It's there. It's in English and it's really not terribly hard to understand. There's a lot of data in there. And there's a lot of assumptions in there, but I think a lot of the go forwards that are outlined in there are still valid.
and
Yes,
to your point, Brian, I mean, you're new associated with the airport, and so everything that we're doing is kind of new, and I think getting familiarized with it, I understand why you would like to, delve into it. I guess I'd have to agree with Frank that I think it's probably premature for us to spend a lot of effort at this time, but you're having it here as a discussion item for us to air our thoughts is what we need to do. We have different opinions, that's why they've got 7 of us,
And I would say anybody on the board that perhaps has ideas that they'd like to present that are outside of the current plan, that would be part of our function. not a problem with that, but to go back and, other than make sure you have a current understanding of what is there. So when the time comes, we'll be ready to deal with it. The other thing I would say too, is we're a very peripheral part of that whole process. I went to that timetable, where it's stakeholders and airport administration and the engineers and all the people who are involved in the airport board. Really in that instance, kind of the tail trying to wag the dog. So I think what's important is for us to keep perspective on. Number one, the timing, number two, what our role is going to be in this. And it is everybody's responsibility to understand what's in there. Like I said, it's not something you may want to sit down and take in one day. But certainly if you give it enough time, you can get a pretty good idea of what they were thinking back then, what the challenges were, many of which remain the same. And of course, we can all bring to mind newer challenges we have, increased population pressures, for example, for hangar lots and things like that. I think it would be constructive for us to say, okay, these are some things we need to be thinking about. Don't really need to go back to what was put together in 2019, other than to understand what was there and realize it was springboard.
You said something about next year. Maybe I misheard, but I wasn't sure what you were referring to earlier.
2024.
Yes, about an update or something like
Yeah,
that.
I talked to Gaston earlier, would be, I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah, very recent conversations. On looking towards possibly looking for an update as early as next year, master plan update. So
The conversation with whom?
with the FAA, with our planners,
And they're suggesting that's something to be looking.
some towards, just with development, changing the environment as far as noise, population around the airport, different uses of the airport. There's been a lot of significant changes in the last master plan in that regard. So, and we are just barely scratching the surface on that, bringing that forward. So as I continue to have those conversations with them, I'll bring it to you guys, but the board is going to be, if that is the route we go, that you guys are going to be directly involved in the collaborative process along the way. So it is a pretty lengthy process for that.
Okay, well, I think, it's a good discussion to have.
I think it is.
I
think it is
I-
as well. And
I reviewed the document backwards and forwards
Yeah.
from a legal perspective, and then also, pretty much slept with the dang thing for a while too. But, just to be prepared to come on here and looked at it several times since, but, I know Chris, who's also, a non-flyer
Yeah.
on the board, football. Surely he can go read it. Yes, like you're saying, go fly spec it like I have, but I also thought it's nice to have just a presentation to just give a quick framework for folks. But I hear what you're saying. I do. And then, I think my interest was this EA that they're scoping, right? I mean, the EA, those projects that they're thinking about scoping for an EA, right? They hear from that, and that's something to understand. Most people hear EA and they go, and it's kind of a mystery, like, why are they doing this?
And I can understand your interest, this really goes to your profession. But it's one small piece of a very big puzzle.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying is, and with gas and assuming responsibilities here only recently, I know there's a lot on his plate. We talked about how far behind we are in the curve and so many things. I just really don't want to put him in a position where he's taking time away from other activities.
Right, and I think that, like you said, it's a good discussion to have. There's gonna be times when I'm gonna wanna talk about something that it's not gonna go anywhere, but gonna hear some opinions from different people than Steve Anderson around the table. And we need to hear that. And so, so when we've got something that we'd like to take you, put on the agenda, we ought to be able to put it on there. It may not go anywhere, but we're at least gonna hear it. We're gonna see.
Discussed it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. That's what I promised you.
Yeah.
Threw my name in the hat for the camera was everybody gets
And, when the time comes, yes, it's still gonna be neck deep. Like, there is a point where there's a lot coming at you hard and fast, and then there's a whole lot of homework to do, so.
Okay, well, I don't know, we want to just, kind of like table this so that others can weigh into the discussion, but I'm fine with leaving it here or just tabling it to the next meeting about it.
Well, since it's an action item, I would suggest that we table it.
Okay.
As our.
Anybody object to just tabling this and carrying it over to the next one? Sure. Right,
I'm okay taking it. I might just throw out my comments. I've read it a couple of times and went through the process and it was a long arduous process to go through. I need to read it again. It's always helpful when you have those documents when they're old, whether you do it as just a review or something to pull up. Or people go through it and they come back with, there's some areas as we move forward that might need to be addressed or changed, or if I have questions. Because it is a important document to what we do, but, like I said, I've read it, I could refresh myself on it, and I'd be okay if we don't have a presentation. It was more about maybe those that haven't seen it in quite a while, to maybe get the public or others that are on the board, some of you have seen it quite a bit, so that helps.
I know it's so well prepared too, it's gonna be nice when the time comes. Just to be able to update from that document, because I know that there was just a lot of work when it was, I remember going to several public presentations.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about, all the different runway options. That, I don't know if it really been covered before, but there was a lot of work put into it, so it's gonna be complicated, but it's nice to have that as a baseline to work with.
And Gaston's comments that since that time, 2019, if you look at the things that have changed. Just the feel, the growth, all of those things, the number of trips and things that have come in here have changed. And I haven't looked at it in light of the changes that have happened in the last 2
right, there was like interpolation of certain, air traffic statistics and some assumptions, and then time changes things and then those change, but I get what you're saying, Frank, I get what you're saying, Steve, like. There's time for visiting on that. Maybe that's not the right thing right now, and we also don't want to overtax, and we don't direct airport staff, so I'm okay, I'm just glad we had a discussion about it, we'll table it over to our next meeting. And if, I was gonna wait for public comment to get to you, if you don't mind. And then, last item on the, official business agenda before we get to public comment, was just solicit airport board input on agenda items for the next meeting. We can figure what you have any to suggest, but I think we have some carryover items from this one, and we'll just carry those over to the next agenda. Is there anything beyond that?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, then
I might just reserve my right to call you up, say, I had an inspiration last night and this,
Right.
I think we ought to fit this time. I'd like to
You
reserve
guys are
that.
always welcome, if you want to email me and say, I got something I'd like on the agenda, there's no reason you can't do that, you can. Just don't share it with everybody else, or we wind up in a foul from the meeting and stuff. But, and agendas kind of fall outside all those things set in the agenda. So,
I think Brad has a comment.
I was just gonna mention, it's not necessarily the next time, but you mentioned some of the city stuff, and I was thinking about, there's probably 3 areas, and it wouldn't take very long. To update the group on. One was on where we're at on the Ramsey Road extension of the Lancaster. Our comp plan does have a section that relates to the airport, and it's not very long. Outlined what's in that and how it relates to the airport and any growth items.
Is that online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, so you can look at it. So there's 3 things that could be fairly quick. But maybe in October or something like that, if the group wanted to hear something like that.
Yeah.
So,
let's pick it up and next time, and we'll.
okay.
Now, so that brings us to the end of the business agenda. And I would turn out agenda item 10, which is public comment. And I know we have members of the public, at least one that would like to comment. So please come on up, introduce yourself, and let us know your thoughts.
My name is Keaton Brown, and I work with Cancraft. I was just, I read the comprehensive plan and the airport master plan. And I just thought it might be interesting, instead of reviewing the plan itself, but to review, I know there's been some changes to what has happened compared to what the plan says is supposed to happen. So that might be an interesting review, although I'm sure that next year, if the new plan is supposed to be developed, that you want to do all of that, but.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to join in public comment? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is adjournment. I move to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. Any objections to adjourn? No, I hear no objections, so we have unanimity on adjourning. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending.
Yeah, you can go to my